This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate, brought to you by the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which promotes humanistic, democratic and liberal values in the social discourse in Israel. I am your host, Gilad Halpern, and every week I'll be engaging in close encounters of the intellectual kind with writers and scholars, or simply people of ideas of all types and vocations who have done something to make our lives a tad more interesting. My guest today is a historian of Zionism at the University of Haifa, specializing in the role of women in Zionism and their relative absence from the Zionist historiography. Her forthcoming book, Writing Palestine, is an edited compilation of the writings of Dorothy Kahn, an American journalist based in Palestine until her death in 1950, and is about to be published by Academic Studies Press. Dr. Esther Carmel-Hakim, hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Good morning.
So Zionist history, from its very inception, is teeming with illustrious female characters. Golda Meir and Henrietta Sewell, to mention but a couple. And again, this egalitarian ethos was a central tenet of Labour Zionism, socialism, etc. So would you say that, taking all this into account, that women didn't really play a central part in it, especially in comparison to other national movements in the 20th century?
I think they did play an important role, but this role was not exposed, was not researched, was not acknowledged until the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm. And why is that?
Why is that? Because it's not typical to the Zionist movement. Most histories, history is his story. So women are excluded from the history because until a few years ago, it was not considered important what women did.
But it's bizarre, because if they were important in real time, when humanity or society was a lot less advanced in relation to women, why, with the passage of time, would they be relegated further back?
Okay, I can tell you about my research. The problem is that women were doing and busy doing and not recording and not leaving many documents. And in order to research, especially history, you need documents. In order to do my dissertation, I had to travel or get material from 4 different continents, 20 archives, mostly private archives at people's homes. Even the book that I'm going to publish, the archive of Dorothy Kahn Baradon, was at a place of her son. So women were busy doing and not really recording, and this is why when people wrote the history, they ignored or had difficult time to find material.
Mm-hmm. But it's not only the women's role in the actual revolution of Zionism, it's also their different take on the revolution of Zionism, because Zionism, as you see it, not only invented the new Jew, it invented the new Jewess as well.
Okay, so I do agree with you that Zionism was a revolution that wanted to create a new Hebrew man. They didn't even use the word Jew and Jewess. They used Hebrew and Hebrew woman. And the idea was to create a productive, healthy, actually the contradiction of all the stereotype, the anti-Semitic stereotype. And while it was quite clear who the new Hebrew man is, it was very unclear who the new Hebrew woman was. And women had to invent themselves. And in my opinion, the one who helped to design the new Hebrew woman was Hannah Meisel Shochat, who came from Russia to the land of Israel in 1909 as part of the second wave of immigration, as a socialist, a Zionist woman who believed that women should take an equal part in the Zionist revolution, not by becoming like men, but by finding their own voice in agriculture. Working the land was the main ideal of the Zionist movement. And without understanding the agricultural settlements of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, Zionism cannot be explained. What was completely ignored was the role of women in that settlement, because
And how was it different from the role of men in relation to that specific vocation?
Okay, so most of the colonies of the first wave of immigration from the end of the 19th century were based on one agricultural branch, usually fields of barley and wheat in the north and wine or vine and oranges in the south. But they were based on one agricultural branch, which is a very risky fact, because if there is a drought or a problem of pests in the orchards or on the vine, the whole family can go bankrupt. Now, mixed farming is a solution. But for mixed farming, meaning growing vegetables, fruit, eggs, and cows, this was not developed in the colonies. And Hannah Meisel's idea was that by developing these usually or traditionally female branches, together with training women in home economics, this would be the solution for the mixed farming. And by that, she got the support of both the Zionist women organization abroad and the Zionist establishment here in Israel to develop these branches. Mm-hmm. The problem was that they didn't give money. And the money and the support, the financial support to these agricultural training institutions came from Zionist women organization.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to the Zionist women organizations, I would like to spend some more time on Hannah Meisel individually and maybe extrapolate from that. How was a pioneering Zionist woman accepted by her immediate surrounding, I would even say her husband and family, her community, and further up, and that's where we get to the institutional level, by the movement itself? Okay,
so in theory, the agronomist of the Zionist movement supported the idea of Hannah Meisel. Even Arthur Rupin, the head of the Eretz Israel office in Jaffa, when Hannah Meisel came to him less than a year after she came here, offering to establish an agricultural training farm for women, thought it was a great idea, because he remembered that the Templars, the German who settled in Palestine, just a decade before the first wave of immigration, the German Templar told him, maybe you, Jews, will be able to work in agriculture, but no Jewish woman would ever get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to milk the cows, and a farmer cannot survive without a female farmer or his wife. And Rupin understood that it is important. The problem is that...
But just to... Yes. The agricultural Zionist settlement started in the 1880s, so that was right. About 30 years before Hannah Meisel came to Arthur Rupin and offered him that idea. So up until then, women did not play any part in Zionist agriculture?
No. Don't forget that the first wave of immigration was immigration of families. And women who came to a new country, usually in a lower standard of living from where they came, Romania or Russia, did not have time to work in agriculture. They had to take care of their families. In the second wave of immigration, out of the 30,000 approximately, 2,000 to 3,000 were single men and women, labor Zionists, who believed not only that they will become agricultural workers, but they also expected to change the society and self-work. There was no ideology of self-work by the first colony. They could hire Arabs, men or women, so there was no ideology of working themselves. Mm-hmm. So This is a big difference. So women might have a chicken or a cow for the consumption of the family, but they did not have a dairy to sell dairy products or vegetable garden to sell it.
So Hannah Meisel really sought to institutionalize the reality that was
yes,
on the ground.
What I found in my dissertation, and this was, for me at least, it was really a discovery that training women for agricultural work was not a Zionist invention. It was part of the first wave of feminism at the end of the 19th century, when women organizations, who were the initiative, wanted to give women economic self-sustain. They wanted them to be independent economically. And they thought that these agricultural branches, which were traditionally done by farmers' wives, would be suitable to train city women to come and get a new profession.
Mm-hmm. Is that why Hannah Meisel was essentially forgotten? Because she focused on really the mundane aspect of the Zionist revolution rather than the lofty ideology?
I don't think she was forgotten because of that, because agricultural work was the main ideal of the Zionist movement. I think she was left out as many women in the Zionist movement. Women contributed to literature, to dance, to singing, to architecture. The designer, the first female architect in Germany who came here in the third wave of immigration, who designed the agricultural school for women in Nahalal, is also completely forgotten, even though she designed also the first modern hotel in Tel Aviv, the Hotel of Kete Dan, that became the Dan chain hotel. So women contributed in hotel industry, in agriculture, in culture, in so many other fields that are still waiting to be exposed.
And also, I mean, this contrast between what it was like in real time at the turn of the 20th century and what it was 100 years later. But bear in mind that women got the right to vote in the Zionist Congress as early as 1898. It's just inconceivable.
Okay, so here is the paradox that I mentioned before, that the Zionist movement was the first movement in Europe to give women the right to vote. In the Second Zionist Congress in 1898, as you said, but the first woman to be in the Zionist executive was only 30 years later, in 1927, and that was Henrietta Sold. This is one of the reasons why women who joined the Zionist movement, expecting a better and more central part in their lives as women had in the traditional Jewish religion, at least, they were so disappointed that in 1907, in the 8th Zionist Congress, the wives of the leaders of the Zionist movement who were in Germany established the first Zionist women organization. And they were looking for challenges and how to support women in the land of Israel. And Hannah Meisel was the link, first with this German Jewish organization called Association of Hebrew Women for the Culture in the Land of Israel, and then Hadassah, WITSO Canada, and WITSO from England. So,
also, the Zionist women organizations, WITSO and Hadassah and the others, were they also preoccupied with finding a place for women in the Zionist movement? Was that really their credo and purpose?
Yes, because they found out that they were good to raise money, but they did not have a say on what will the money be used for. So what happened to the women in Germany, and then in England, and then in Canada, and then even to the Mizrahi women who were raising money and giving it to the rabbis, and they say, no, we want to establish our own institution. In their case, an institution to teach religious women in Palestine religion and productive occupation. So the women Zionist organization, despite the fact that they have the right to vote, they did not have any influence. This is why, and there was a big debate, if WITSO, Women International Zionist Organization, should be organized as a separate organization or as part of the Zionist organization. And their conclusion was that they need their own separate organization, so they will be in charge to how to promote women in Israel. And
did they prove to be more effective than they would have been?
Yes. If you say today Na'amat, which is the Pioneer Women new name, and WITSO, you think about daycare. But very few people know that the first decade of WITSO, 75% of their budget in Palestine went to agricultural training. For productive, they said, we don't want philanthropy. We want to give women tools to function in the new society. The first decade was agriculture. Then they became more traditional for cooking and sewing and other.
Okay, let's now go to Dorothy Kahn-Baradon, the subject of your forthcoming book. She was an American journalist who came to Palestine in the 30s and started writing for the Palestine Post, the forebear of today's Jerusalem Post. Why was she interesting to you as a scholar of the history, as a historian of Zionism?
Okay, I'm in my research, I try to expose women who contributed in many areas, but I'm especially interested in those women who come from the US and Canada, from North America, because these women did not suffer from anti-Semitism. did not, or not at least persecution, not physically. They did suffer anti-Semitism, but not like in Europe. They did not come because they ran away from persecution. They chose to come here. And for me, this is a challenge, especially the first one that I researched, the third president of Hadassah, who not only left a mansion in Long Island with 22 rooms and 5 servants, but chose to come to a socialist kibbutz, Hashomer HaTzair. Irma Lindheim. Rama Lindheim, we had a movie about her, which is on Vimeo. You can watch the movie Rama's Choices. Why did she choose to come here? As a middle-aged woman, she was 47, a widow, and she chose to be on a kibbutz. So when I heard about Dorothy Kahn-Baradon, she's a little bit different from the other women. There are a few of them. The first progressive school in Israel was established by Deborah Cullen, who was in Jerusalem and established a progressive school. Dorothy Kahn-Baradon was a journalist at Atlantic City. And she chose to come here. She had a recommendation for Agronsky, Agron, the editor of Palestine Post, a paper that just started to appear on January 1st. And she came here in May 1933, and then already in August 1933, she published her first article in Palestine Post, and it was about Hitler present, or what Hitler has done to Tel Aviv with all the mass immigration from Germany. I found her interesting because, unlike other journalists, she wrote from a woman point of view, authentic material in English about women, about Arabs, about the kibbutz. She herself lived on a kibbutz, Givat Brenner, for 3 years, and then when she lived in Moshav Merchavia, she put her child in the kibbutz collective education and took him out because there was too much hygiene and too little affection. And the book she wrote about comparing a moshav and a kibbutz is very interesting because it is criticism from a point of view of someone who appreciates the kibbutz, not like what is very popular today. So a woman was real Zionist and raised a kid here. Henrietta Sohl did not raise kids here. Rama Lindheim did not raise kids here. Dorothy Kahn-Baradon raised the kid here.
And could also write and left a hefty archive.
Right, in English. And by the way, most of her articles, which appeared in the Palestine Post, are all online under the Palestine Post archive.
Yeah, and did you have any insights as an American? You said that she wrote as a woman. Were there any elements in her writing that you said, okay, this is really an American point of view?
Not only American point of view, but she tried to be objective. She did not commit herself to any party or any ideology. So she could write really as an objective journalist, seeing very ironic, and her description of Tel Aviv, for example, are really so alive that you can see the picture of the Tel Aviv beach or the Tel Aviv cafes, and describing the mass immigration from Germany. And since her husband knew Arabic, she could go to Arab village and interview people there. She was a witness, or she was invited to the wedding of Hussein's father, Prince Talal, in Amman. She visited the camps of after the Second World War in Cyprus. She interviewed, and next week there is an exhibit at Haifa, she interviewed Rabbi Israel Lau when he came to Atlit, 8-year-old, with his brother Naftali. She interviewed them in English. Wow. So this is all authentic material written by a woman from a woman point of view, describing daily life in Israel, something that very few people did.
Especially in English. This is really, really fascinating, but I'm afraid we've run out of time. Dr. Esther Carmel-Hakim, historian of Zionism at the University of Haifa and author of the forthcoming book, Writing Palestine, Dorothy Kahn-Baradon, 1933 to 1950, that will appear shortly by Academic Studies Press. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And also big thanks to Alex Benish, the sound engineer, and to the Van Leer Institute for their generous support. If you like this podcast, there are many more where it came from. Just go to www.tlv1.fm/podcasts and take your pick.